Welcome back to the Vitamentality podcast. I'm your host, Angel Munro. We're talking all things health and wellness, and we're looking at ways to live a vital life. Short disclaimer, this is not intended as medical advice. This is just for general purposes only. So welcome back. Today I want to talk about peptides. I want to have a little look at how they were originally isolated, how they're made, the myth around bioidentical substances, and also going to have a little bit of a look at Lifewave patches, which people are touting as an alternative to peptides. And yeah, I was hesitant to actually do this in the end. I wanted to do it about 5 weeks ago, and I try and spend a bit of time really researching something so I can really give the topic justice. And I also just life stuff came in the way, and work, so on and so forth. And then within the last couple of weeks, everyone started talking about peptides, and people were talking about them before, but like every time I open my phone now or look on the internet, there's peptides come up in the conversation somewhere. So yeah, I thought, oh, maybe, gosh, everyone's going to be bored about peptides. But I think I'm covering some things today that I haven't seen other people cover yet. So yeah, let's get into it. I always come from a terrain perspective of health. It's what you're eating, how much you're moving, how much you're outside, making sure that you're not getting too much toxins, which we live in a very toxic world now. And that is different from the allopathic or the mainstream medical version of germs, genes, bad luck. And so this is where I'm coming from as we look at peptides today. So, like I said, unfortunately, in this day and age, like modern living, there's so many toxins in the environment that we do have to triage, I think, how many toxins that we bring into our life. And like, I don't think about it in the sense of, you have to be stressed out about everything and everything you're using and everything you're touching. I just think about it as having like strong boundaries. Like, I know that there's a boundary for me on the products that I bring into my life and into my environment. And yeah, that doesn't feel like a stress because I've already established the boundaries. So it's not even something that has to be overthought every day. There's just things that are just out of bounds, basically. So I guess that is going to be like a big theme when we're talking about the peptides, because people are having good results from peptides and short-term results. Who knows what the long-term results are going to be, because there's no long-term data. But some people are also having bad results already. But the people who are having good results are fiercely defending the peptide conversation. And I think I want to try and do it justice to just include, why some people are having good results, because I think it's too simplistic to say something's really bad and something's really good and just ignore the people who have had the experience. So yeah, and we all make concessions in our life. We all have a vice. I've said many times my vice, I love wine and hot chips at a wine bar on the weekend. That's my vice. And there's some people who would never do that, and maybe they've been chronically ill their whole life. They can barely get out of bed, and they've used peptides, changed their life. I mean, I personally wouldn't take them, but I think, and I really can't see any justification for a well person personally. But yeah, everyone makes concessions somewhere along the line. So I think when people are having these discussions, I can still say for sure, I don't think these things are good. I don't think anyone should be taking them. But if someone wants to go and do it, then, it's not really any of my business. But I think the point is that people don't usually know what they're taking. So this is why I wanted to go through this with a fine-tooth comb. So Because when you're informed, you can say, do I want to take the risk here or do I not want to take the risk? So anyway, I was watching. The reason why this whole thing came about in the first place is this. I'm not going to name names, but there was a doctor, health influencer, who has generally like aligned with my way of thinking, and I've listened to lots of podcasts with them on and things, and they kind of come from the terrain camp as well. They had this beauty webinar, and so it was basically a free webinar, and then it was kind of like a sales pitch for a big container, a quite expensive container. And I was like, yeah, to the beauty webinar. And this person looks notably different, like really good. And had said they hadn't got anything, no fillers, no Botox, no surgery, no nothing. They've just found this new hack, and they look amazing, and they feel amazing, and they're working out better, and all this stuff. And so anyway, I was like, cool. I want to know. I wonder if it's like salt, or I don't know. I just naively thought it was going to be something minor. And anyway, she talks for ages, like 45 minutes, on and on, all this different stuff, and talking about her kind of history as an activist, and really spoken out about the medical industry for years, famously. And I didn't realize there was like this kind of backstory justification. Anyway, drops the bomb that the thing that she's been doing is the peptides, and this is this new container that she's offering people that's like had a sliding scale, I guess, because they're personally tailored to each individual. So from what I could see, it was like starting from, I don't know, maybe $5,000 to 20. Like, don't quote me, but it was something like that, depending on what package you got. And I nearly turned it off, and then I thought, no, I'm gonna listen to it, because you can't just be dismissive all the time, which I can be sometimes. So I listened to it all, and it didn't get any better. But yeah, that was my inspiration for doing this, because there were two things that she said that stuck out to me, a little bit of like a red flag. It kind of piqued my curiosity. One was that she said that what's in these peptides were bioidentical to what's in the body. And she also said, because we live under such a toxic environment, which is true, that it can accelerate aging, which is true. But then she said, so these things exist, so why not use them? But like, as you'll see as we go along, there's so many toxins in them that seems to counter, like, you don't avoid toxins by adding more toxins. That seems, it doesn't make sense. So that was my first issue. And the bioidentical thing, I'm like, okay, let's see how bioidentical they are. She didn't name exactly what peptides. She did mention the copper peptide, which is the GHK-Cu peptide, but she didn't. They're basically packages of combined, depending on the individual. And from what I can see, a lot of people in that same space, they're using a couple of things. There's one called a glow stack, and there's another one called a wolverine stack, and they do, depending on what you're after, be to improve like how you look, your hair, your skin, your nails. There's others that help like muscle definition and stuff. So usually people are using a couple at a time. I'm going to briefly kind of talk about a couple of them, but really I'm looking at the copper one because it's just too much to go through every single thing. You'd be bored. But anyway, hopefully it's going to give you like a little bit of an overview of like what we're talking about here with peptides. So and there's a lot of what I'm saying in this one that you can apply in terms of if you want to look in more deeply into the others. So what is a peptide? It is a short chain amino acids. So it's the short chains of amino acids, sorry. And it's the building block of proteins. So these things are so small, that you can't see them under a microscope. And this is where it starts to get a little bit kind of iffy, because I think people think that viruses, hormones, vitamins, peptides, you assume that you look under a microscope and you can see them, but it's not the case. There's this huge chemical process that happens, and then they look under really high-powered microscopes, not regular microscope, that also have this huge chemical process to be able to do it. And it doesn't necessarily represent what's going on in the body, but we'll get into that a little bit more. So the copper peptide GHK-Cu is meant to be naturally occurring copper binding tripeptide made out of glycine, histidine, and lysine. So they're 3 amino acids. And the idea is that it acts as this master regulator of tissue repair and cellular regeneration, which is why people use it as basically as a non-intrusive beauty enhancement, I guess. And the premise is that your body, as it ages, your GHK-Cu levels drop. And so that's why people are using it for anti-aging. It's naturally occurring in the urine and the blood plasma, as well as the saliva. And it's copper binding. So basically, the synthetic version anyway seems to bind to copper, and it gets copper into the tissues and the cells quickly through the bloodstream. And it doesn't kind of go through that, when we're consuming copper through food, it goes through digestive tract. It's, it's a whole different mechanism. When you're sticking it straight into the bloodstream, you get quite a lot at a quick amount of time, but there are side effects for that, which we'll go through. So like I said, the key kind of properties that people are wanting to use it for is skin regeneration, elastin, collagen, and improves firmness, gets rid of wrinkles, helps with hair growth, also helps with wound healing and pain, which is why some people use it for chronic illness. It's good for energy production. It helps with iron absorption, copper, also the peptide, but copper on its own is energy production, iron absorption, connective tissue and skin, and immune and nerve help. So yeah, like I said, the idea of the copper peptide is basically to get more copper into the cells and into the tissues. So I had a look at the isolation paper for the original isolation paper. I believe it was like 1976 or something. It's attached at the end of the show notes for the GHK-Cu copper peptide. And I've also attached, just for interest, the original vitamin C isolation and the original vitamin B12 isolation. And you can see with the processes, if you have a look at the processes that they go through, it no longer resembles nature at all. So with vitamin C, so they get some lemon juice, they add acid, and they add some other chemical, and they add some other chemical, and they do all this other stuff to it. And then they say, oh, that's vitamin C that was in the lemon. That's not isolating anything, it's adding things. It's the same. The B12 was pretty similar process to finding the peptides, where it's like some high pressure system through silica. There's all kinds of corrosive chemicals that are added to it, and then it has to go through this other lengthy process to see it through it's a TEM microscope, a transmission electron microscopy, which has its own kind of heavy metal exposure and stuff that has to do to this. So they would have got a blood plasma when they're looking at the copper peptide. And, with all of these things, I added the 3 because I know that we're talking about copper peptides, but I just want to show, you could do the same if you did the isolation study to testosterone or estrogen. Like, they take something from nature, they add all of these chemicals, huge, ridiculous productions, then mess with it some more with more heavy metals and things, and look at it through this really crazy microscope that usually involves some radiation as well. And then they say, this is what's in the body. And it'd be like if you took my hand and you blended it up, cut it off, blend it up in the blender, add a whole lot of acetone and other corrosive chemicals to it, and then try and put it back together. You couldn't put it back together, and you couldn't isolate anything from it and say that was anything in my hand. It's not. There's some things that were from my hand, but there's all this other crap in it. It's exactly the same. So I won't go through the process because, like I said, it's too boring, but please have a look at them. I gave you a very short, erratic version. But yeah, what are we left with? And so that begs the question, like, is there actually a peptide the way that we think? Like, we just left with an artifact, and all the other studies that are done and done on this synthetic version, which is a slightly different process to how they isolate it. So to make it, they get those amino acids, which would have gotten synthetic, which would have gone through their own chemical process, copper, synthetic, gone through its own chemical process. And they make this strong chemical compound that is put onto resin and then cleaved off the resin with more strong chemicals. And and that's meant to be your bioidentical peptide. Like, I don't have resin in my body or any of these other things. That's not bioidentical at all. So I think the thing is that people generally, it doesn't matter if it's a hormone or a pharmaceutical or a supplement, a synthetic supplement or whatever, that, or even if it's perfume, or people kind of disregard all the chemicals that are involved in all of the process. Most people, they just don't think about it. And everyone has an upper limit to toxicity, like everyone. And it just depends on the individual what that upper limit is. And, I'll give you an example. So say we bake a loaf of bread, and a loaf of bread has yeast, water, salt, sugar, flour. And someone says, and so made the bread, and someone says, oh no, I can't eat the bread, I'm allergic to wheat or I'm allergic to gluten. And you go, no, it's none of those things anymore. It's a bread. Don't forget about the gluten, forget about the wheat. It's a bread. It's nothing to worry about. This is kind of the same attitude that we have with all of the chemicals that are involved in making these products. They haven't disappeared. They're still there, and they still cause an effect. So, I think that in terms of the short-term benefits that we're seeing with people using the peptides, and I can say this for copper, I think is that if lots of, especially women, are deficient in copper, and so it makes sense if they're getting some, that they'll feel better. But it's not necessarily, you're going to have other issues down the track because you've got all these chemicals that you've kind of ignored, like I said. And also any synthetic mineral is going to compete with other minerals in the body. And so you have other issues, magnesium, zinc, down the track. So, so it's just kind of not really worth it, in my opinion, anyway. The thing about toxins is they don't always show an effect straight away, our body's pretty brilliant, and it has this ability to sequester toxins away from the main organs in the body and store it. Like we store toxins in our fat as well, which I think is one way you could explain, why there's been like a bit of a gradual weight gain over the population. One of the reasons anyway. And so we tend to store toxins to kind of deposit into the tissues, and it's not where we kind of get to that upper limit that I was talking about, where it becomes a problem, and then all of a sudden you've got cancer or some other neurological disease or whatever. Insert a million things. Even allergies can be as a result of toxins kind of affecting the gut lining, kind of causing that hyperpermeability into the gut. In terms of the side effects that people are reporting from these peptides, you don't want too much copper in the bloodstream. When you're eating copper through foods, it gets digested. And this kind of like free flowing amount of copper in the blood can definitely be a problem. Can affect the liver and the kidneys. There's a thing called the copper uglies. And I'm laughing because it's just so like horrific, where people are the anecdotal reports that people are getting like sagging, crepey skin, like accelerated aging from taking these. You would be so pissed off if you took something to make you look better and it made you look like accelerated aging, because wow, I would be pissed off anyway. To me, like I can understand. So vanity is obviously like a driving force for people to take these products. To me, the vanity is a cause to not take it, because who wants to, I mean, aging is an adjustment anyway. Who wants to make it go faster? If that's a possibility, I mean, I just would not be touching it with a gazillion foot pole. The GHK-Cu is highly reactive, and it can react with other peptides. And people are taking these combinations, injecting them into themselves willy-nilly at home. You can overdose on all of these things, and there's no long-term studies on any of them, let alone like these kind of combinations that people are coming up with. So it can give mixed results. There's also, people can also have allergic reactions and things too. Have I covered all of that? Oh yeah, and GI disturbances. So I have so far just spoken about what the process is, what chemicals are used, in how they're actually made and how they're isolated in the first place. So they also have preservatives in them when they're packaged up to be injected. So they all have different ones. And like I said, we're not going over every single one, but I'm going to go over three. So the GHK-Cu, the copper peptide that we're speaking about, that one has, I don't think I'm going to say this right, miraculous. And so it can cause liver damage and kidney damage as well, headaches, nausea, skin issues, allergies. But so that's not great. That's the preservative in there. So there's all of these influences that are kind of pushing these peptides at the moment, and a lot of them wouldn't take the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, and were very vocal about it. And the funny thing is that the ingredient, I just did a whole podcast. The last one I did was on polyethylene glycol, which was an ingredient one way or another in all of the COVID jabs. And I think you can attribute it was the major factor for a lot of these issues that we were seeing: myocarditis, blood clots, Guillain-Barré, other neurological issues, and other allergic reactions and anaphylaxis. And I think a lot of these people don't realize that that same ingredient is in one of them. It's in the BPC 157, which is part of the glow stack and the wolverine stack that I mentioned before, that people are taking for cosmetic reasons. Yeah, because it's meant to be good for tissue repair, collagen, anti-aging, focuses on healing muscles, tendons, gut issues, and yeah, then the copper does all the anti-aging stuff. And yeah, the BPC 157 contains PEG. So that is a peptide that's found in gastric juices. Apparently, it goes through the same kind of crazy isolation that I mentioned with the copper peptide. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to have anything with pegs injected into my body ever. Another one found in the glow stack, which was another cosmetic one, was TB500, and that has mannitol in it. And serious side effects from mannitol is heart failure, kidney damage, pulmonary congestion, severe allergic reactions. So yeah, none of these things are sounding good to me. They're not sounding very bioidentical. Yeah. So there's influencers that are saying, other health and wellness influencers that are saying, yes, peptides are bad. They do contain all these chemicals and they're not bioidentical. You should instead take these use these Lightwave patches. They're just patches you stick on your body. They reflect your cell and tissue light back to your body and stimulate serum production of the GHK-Cu, the copper peptide. And sunlight and infrared from the studies are meant to stimulate the body's own GHK-Cu. Now that I've read the initial study, I don't know exactly what's happening, but sunlight definitely is protective. So I get that part. Yeah, so the idea of these patches, it's just reflecting your own light that we generate back to us. And shout out to Tatum Toner. She pulled up the patent for this, for these Lightwave patches, and I went and had a look for myself. I've put it in the show notes as well, and you got to scroll. It's a lot to get down to before you find the ingredients of the Lightwave patches, and they sell different ones, and in the patent, they don't explain which ingredient list is for which patch. It says one patch may contain this, one patch may contain that, one patch may contain this. So, some of it's a little bit cloudy, but they all say that they contain a peptide. Most of them are GHK-Cu, the copper peptides, some are other ones. And then L-carnitine, zinc gluconate with these synthetic versions, not natural, not bioidentical carnitine, not bioidentical zinc, man-made, citric acid, not from lemon juice, usually made from a mold spore, something gross like that. And GMO something. Anyway, look up citric acid. It's not lemon juice. Yeah, so it's got all these things in it. It's in this like polyester patch. It's not reflecting. It doesn't seem, from what I can see from having a look at the patent, it doesn't seem like it's actually reflecting its light back to you. And it just seems like a transdermal application of these amino acids, peptides, and some minerals. And the thing about the peptide injections is that most people, from what I can see, even though I don't recommend them, are doing them for like a month-long period and then that's it. Maybe until they want to do it again. I don't know. But it was meant to be like a short-term thing where people are using these patches all the time. And I think some people have been arguing about the transdermal. Transdermal just means it's going through the skin, and they go, it's not like an injection. Anything coming through the skin into the bloodstream actually is a bit like an injection, even though it's not being physically injected, it's going into the bloodstream. That's going to be slower, but if people are using them all the time, like, I mean, I don't know. There's a possibility, and this is just completely complete speculation on my part, but depending on how often people are using these, I suspect there could be a possibility that they would be getting even more because they're using it more long term. So I don't know. There's before and afters of these of people using these Lifewave patches. And again, the results look pretty good. And, you know, and not that I've seen every one, but the ones that they put. Yeah, I can see why people want like a quick answer. And if they've been in pain or whatever, of course, people want a solution. And again, it's like, I guess you pick your poison. Like if you really want to use it and you're okay with all of the things that I just said, you're okay with that still, then that's totally on you. But yeah, those toxins don't go as these peptides are absorbed into the skin, so are these toxins. And I think people get the reaction from the minerals first because their body kind of goes to utilize them. And like I said, our body seems to sequester things that it really doesn't recognize, like toxins, into the rest of the body. And the more you have, the more it pops up later in some like awful way. So I just don't think it's worth it. I see the allure, but I don't think it's worth it. Sleep, sun, food, movement, herbs, having a good time. That is always the option. And there's always room to adjust, always. Yeah, I think people go, oh, I'm doing everything. But I know for me, I've always used natural products. My parents shopped at health food shops. I've always used like a natural version of toothpaste or the shampoo or whatever. It wasn't until, I mean, over the years, I've gotten a lot cleaner about that. But since I've had the shop and I wanted to be incredibly careful about every single product that I put on there, I've been going over that stuff with a fine tooth comb. And now there is nothing in our house that we, you know, that's got any crap in it really. And it's surprising how hard that is to find. It's like a lot of the stuff in health food shops in terms of like cleaning products and shampoo and conditioner and stuff isn't always that good either. So it takes a bit to actually find the good things. Since I've been really cautious and conscientious about what I'm using, my health's improved. Like, I think I would have been one of those people that would have said a few years ago, I've done everything. And I've still found in the last few years, there's been more things that I can adjust, and I feel even better now. So I think people, you know, we have to keep an open mind that we find new information out all the time. There's usually things that we can change and we can adjust. And that's, to me, that's kind of fun. If you want those things that copper will provide in terms of skin, hair, and nails, and libido, and energy, and zinc and copper work synergistically together when they're in food. When you take them synthetically, they fight with each other. And zinc does similar things to copper, that they need to be together. And you don't want to take any form of copper where it's going to interfere with zinc. And so the only way to avoid that happening is actually to get it through food, or because when it's in nature, they work together, not opposing. And I sell Oyster Max. There's lots of people doing oyster products now. That's the best supplement you can take, is like a freeze-dried oyster powder, or just eat the food with zinc and copper in it if you don't want to take that. Like I said, sunlight is said to accelerate our own copper peptide, if that's really what we've got going on in there. I'm not sure, but sunlight is definitely protective against aging. I think if someone never goes out into the sun, has used sunscreen their whole life, is eating a whole lot of seed oils, and then tries to go in the sun all the time, then the sun in that instance is going to be aging. But if you get out in the morning, you get natural light, you avoid seed oils as much as possible, not all the time, obviously. I told you I like my hot chip, but like you generally keep your diet clean, good fats, sun exposure all the time, light exposure all the time, avoid sunscreen, and you slowly build up a like a skin callus, and then the sun is actually protective, but it has to kind of be done safely. I think that's really important to note. I'm not suggesting a fair skinned person who's not doing all of those things to go out in the sun all the time, but you work your way up to it. I definitely was very fair skinned before and burnt really easily, and I've totally changed that just by those lifestyle changes that I mentioned. In terms of peptides as well, so we find, like I said, they're made out of amino acids in regards to the copper peptide anyway. It's amino acids and copper. You find these things in dairy, like fermented foods. So kefir, kombucha, natto, sauerkraut, miso, beet kvass, yogurt, dairy, in meats like connective tissue. So gelatin and bone broth, things like that, seafood, eggs, sourdough, anything fermented. Yeah, so I would be concentrating on those kinds of foods and fermented foods, and copper and zinc rich foods like seafood and chocolate, pumpkin seeds, cashews. And yeah, just I think, there's so much energy going into people biohacking and maxing their looks and maxing everything in their life, and not enough energy going into living and having fun and spending time doing things that are interesting and having interesting conversations. Not like no one loves aging, but it happens, and I think we just harm ourselves. We look weird. It's just, I personally, anyway, I'm happy to go. I'm happy to just wear nice clothes, move my body, eat good food, have a good time. And I don't love aging either, but I would rather that than ending up with some odd condition, because I was grasping at something that's kind of, not me anymore. Anyway, please have a look at all of the links I've provided, all of the references. It's good to have a look at it yourself just to see how ridiculous, modern biology is. I think there's so many things that we think we understand that we just do not. You do not understand what's happening to the perfect body, which is in harmony perfectly with nature, by adding a whole lot of chemicals to it. Anyway, until next time, thanks for listening.